Noting the time and the presence of a quorum, I call this meeting of the Acton Finance Committee to order. This meeting is being recorded by ActonTV. If anyone else, any of our two esteemed elected officials are recording this, they're supposed to let themselves be known to the chair at this time. Please note this is a hybrid meeting with two of our members dialing in remotely via Zoom, so we'll have to take all votes as roll call. We will not be able to do voice votes. No problem. With that, we'll move to the first item, which is public participation. I see no one rushing to the microphone, so that becomes, once again, one of our fastest items on our agenda. At this point, we're going to move into the task force, to what we were calling previously the cost-cutting task force. You'll see that the agenda item has changed somewhat to say task force versus focus group. I'd like to explain why there is a distinction. At our last meeting, our select board liaison informed us that the Finance Committee does not have the authority under town charter to appoint members to a committee. I guess I probably should have known that, but I was still sent for a loop on that one and had to think that through. And then I did want to have a chance to talk to Christi about it, as this is something that she has been leading up. I'm going to let her go through briefly the pros and cons of each, and then unless you want me to, and then we'll have a conversation as a committee as to which way we would like to go. I'm probably going to defer to Christi's point of view on this, but rather than just one or two people making a decision. So with that as the preamble, being that we cannot do what we discussed in our last meeting, I'll hand it over to Christi and let her describe where we stand.
So if we were to have the task force we designed, we would require asking the select board to make a committee. They could edit the charge, et cetera. I'm sure we could come up with a charge everyone was happy with in that way. Ends up, it's a lot more work. We have different meetings, which have to have different minutes, et cetera. I believe we can get effectively the same results by setting up a focus group, which we could take applications for with the committee members, similar, pretty much exactly as we had discussed previously, but rather than them attending meetings and working directly with us, we would invite them to our meetings in the same way that we have discussions with people who come and speak to us or to ask questions, finance department, et cetera. We would invite the focus group members to come join us in that way. This would require us to have a quorum of the finance committee available to attend listening sessions.
Or a subcommittee that we create.
Or a subcommittee that we create to attend the listening sessions. I am inclined that there should be a quorum of us at least listening to those anyhow, just because this is what we want to be hearing to be making our decisions. Yes, Jason?
So my understanding is that if we go the focus group route, there were going to be three things that we try and accomplish. One is listening sessions, one is general public participation sessions, and the last one being a survey.
Yes, and these are all things we're talking about if we go the task force group previously discussed.
Right. So if we go the focus group route, I think having wide open public participation should be done on a night that we have a full finance committee. But in the interest of trying to get as many focus group possibilities as we possibly can, I would like to have a statutory, not statutory, a temporary subcommittee of 3, so that as long as we have 2 members present, we can have focus groups of smaller size.
My view of the intention of the focus group was more to let us, we will have collated the listening session information we have, and then present them with, here are the problems we're hearing. Do you have ideas? Here's what we have for ideas, et cetera. That would, again, I think that should be with everyone.
I'm concerned with trying to find that many times with 5 people, but okay.
Oh, I think the listening sessions.
The wide listening sessions need to be in front of the whole committee.
Yes.
The smaller focus groups.
So I would recommend for the focus groups that as much as possible, we do them as part of our meetings.
Okay.
Can we define listening versus focus?
So I thought that a listening session would just be a wide open call to anyone, please. I believe you used to refer to it, Mr. Noon, as open mic night, whereas a focus group would be, either proactively reaching out or hearing from people who say they're interested in weighing in and saying, let's meet Saturday at noon, or let's meet, Thursday at 5 in a group of 8 to 10, 8, 10, 15, whatever, however many people we can get in a smaller group to ask a set of questions that we then bring back the results to the wider Finance Committee for. That's what I was thinking, but
Yeah.
I defer to you.
I had been thinking of paring that down to the public members we had discussed having for the task force and having them be just appointed by us as a representative group.
There's no appointing.
Invited?
Invited,
They are
invited, yes, invited.
invited to be a part of the focus group and, if possible, attend our meetings over in Gatier and be a part of the discussion.
Well, another approach would be, say, going to the Council on Aging, going to the Economic Development Committee and asking for representatives to come, but also having that be anybody from that segment who wants to attend that session can attend that session. We could do the same thing with PTSOs if we want to go for parents.
I don't think I entirely followed that. You're saying go to these groups and ask for people who would like to be part of the focus group?
Well,
Or just go talk?
say ask the UDC to nominate a couple people who would come talk to us about the subject, but on that night, you can invite anybody who's interested in that particular aspect to come. I'm concerned about the focus groups in that it'll be a small group of people. It may or may not be open to the public.
So is there any problem, objection with us doing what we did with the PTSOs and the Council on Aging, et cetera, and having two members go to those different meetings and ask to be invited to have a quick conversation, and after 20 minutes, take the summary of what we heard from those different groups and bring them back? Would that be something you'd be willing to entertain too?
We've certainly done that in the past to talk about the point of view. Yeah, you could do that as well, only this time instead of coming with the answers, we come with the questions.
I would do that separate from a focus group.
Okay.
I would like to have a group of people with whom we can have a more detailed conversation than just,
So you're thinking of the focus group as people who come to every meeting that they possibly can?
no, who come to the meetings we invite them to. I mean, maybe once a month sort of thing. It doesn't need to be a group of people off whom we bounce ideas, but who have enough of a background because they've been a part of this.
As long as we don't stumble across the line of appearing to have appointed them. It's got to leave it open.
Yes.
Got to leave it open.
I believe we can we can invite people to be a part of it. It doesn't need to be just whoever shows up. And it's a focus
True.
group, not just an open general meeting.
I think we need to be careful to make sure to leave it open when we do, but yes, by all means.
Oh, it would be an
Yep,
open, it would
of
be a
course.
public meeting.
Good. Okay. I'm on board.
Okay.
Thank you. My understanding of the task force, as we discussed 2 weeks ago, is that this task force will organize some ways to collect opinions, including listening sections, public participation, and survey. And then they will also put together a summary of all this and will be a deliverable, such as a summary or a report. My understanding of a focus group is more like participating, being in part of the listening section, express your opinions and be heard. Not necessarily having the capacity to collect information from various ways or summarize them.
Correct. That work would be the part of the Finance Committee or a subcommittee of the Finance Committee.
So we are scaling probably by changing the name from from task force to focus group, we're scaling back.
Well, yes, not entirely.
Because
say-
I think the name, by calling it focus group, might
No, but
indicate that.
we're still doing the project. We're right now discussing having a focus group element to it.
I would say rather than describing it as scaling back, we're merely changing the root of authority.
The legal structure.
If we stuck with
I-
the task force that we tried to do last week, the root of authority would have to be the select board because they're the only ones that are allowed to make appointments. By calling it a focus group and by maintaining control over all the meetings ourselves, the root of authority remains with the finance committee.
That's right. Thank you for the clarification.
But we're still planning on doing substantially the same thing. We're still trying to get to as many people as we can. We still want to hear from as many people as we can. And we still hope to come to some synthesis of actionable recommendations that we can return to the wider government.
So the finance committee will do this summary of these opinions and this information.
Correct.
All right, thoughts, ideas?
Does anyone have a preference? Is there anyone here who would prefer that we take this to the select board and ask them to create a temporary short-term subcommittee of the select board in, with the intended goals that we laid out last time? Or would we prefer to be the root of authority ourselves and do it predominantly ourselves? We would still rely upon some town resources, such as I'd like to post the survey through the town. I would like to post meeting notices through the town, things along those lines, but a much lighter touch on the responsibility of the select board and on the town staff. For example, we won't have town staff that have to stay late or come in on weekends because we'll be doing it under our own authority, if that makes sense. So I would like to get a sense of the committees, so please feel free to share.
How are we picking the people on the focus groups?
Same way we were going to before. They submit an application chosen by our chair, I believe.
I don't think we can do that. I think we need to just say, this is an open forum. Please let us know if you want to be part of this focus group.
I will check into that. I believe we can.
Okay?
And I think, I specifically would like the focus group to be weighted the way we designed it. Representative.
Okay.
We can certainly invite people to give testimony. That's kind of how I'm like visualizing how this would happen, that we have like certain groups of people that, everyone, of course, is invited to give testimony.
Yes.
But if there are certain groups within town whose opinion we definitely want, we just, I don't know if there's a reminder one sets out inviting them to write down their testimony and come and present it, then we can make sure those voices are heard.
I'm trying to talk about two things, and I think I'm not expressing it well, or it's getting a little lost. We have listening sessions. Everyone should be invited. Everyone should come. And then we have a focus group with whom we have more of an ongoing conversation about what we're hearing and off whom we can bounce ideas about cost-cutting things that come up, et cetera, from our listening sessions. So focus group, different from listening sessions, but all part of this new idea rather than a task force. Did I get that? Good.
I think there's also a question about whether we have the capacity to do that within the finance committee, because if this starts in, say, like September, October, and then goes to June, then besides this standing bi-weekly meeting, this subcommittee within the finance committee will also need to do all these meetings, and then we go attend all these meetings and do take notes and summarize that, whether we have the capacity of appointing 2 or 3 people regularly to do this.
That is why I would like to not have a subcommittee, but keep it as our committee. All this is doing is adding 4 meetings that a quorum of this committee needs to attend which are the listening sessions. Other than that, I recommend we have the focus group come and meet with us as part of our normal sessions. This is, of course, dependent on our chair agreeing to adding that to some agendas.
I'm fine with adding it to the agenda, so it's no problem.
Does that, Steve?
Maybe I'm being dense. Okay. It sounds to me like the focus group becomes what we were calling the task force before, only we're calling them by a different name. But there's still going to be recurring involvement, and are they participating in deliberation with us?
We are presenting ideas to them. They are giving us feedback. As much as that's deliberation,
No, that's,
the example I got was, it's as if we invited the finance department to bring a few people here to answer questions for us. We would invite them to come speak at one of our public meetings and answer some questions for us.
okay.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Martin, would you mind helping clarify this here? Because I want to make sure I understood you correctly.
So to me, a focus group is someone you, as a group of people you interact with, you ask questions of, like, if we change this town service, how would this affect you? And the people who are business people in town would answer one way, the people who are renters in town would answer another way, the people who are parents might answer another way, and then you can talk about another service and say, if we, you know, as part of cost cutting, if we change this service to something else, and get the back and forth. Whereas the listening sessions are just like a hearing, right? Where people come and say, this is what's important to me. I don't want to cut this. I don't think this is necessary. I think we should get rid of that. Whatever, things that they want to tell you guys unsolicited. So, how you manage the deliberations with the focus group, I think is up to you guys, right? How much back and forth there is.
I think there was some concern that I'm hearing from Steve, or maybe I'm feeling dense tonight, about us being allowed to pick people for this.
I think you can definitely pick people. And you're allowed to investigate anything you want in town, right? So if you want to get a particular set of people that you want to bounce ideas off of, I think that's up to you. I don't see a problem with that.
And I presume if they are meeting with us as part of our public meeting, there's no difficulty with the deliberation?
No, absolutely not. That's right. As long as it's an open meeting,
Yeah.
you can talk about anything that's on the agenda.
Does that
And
answer-
and you can just have a broad agenda item.
Does that answer your concern, Steve?
Not entirely. I just see us creating a super group of residents who have more sway on the committee than others, and I don't know that I'm in favor of that.
How is that different from what we would have had with the task force?
Because it would have been a committee, and I would have thought they would have been screened, sworn, all that other stuff that committees are.
Well, these people would be.
No.
You can be screened, you can't be sworn.
Can't be sworn because they're not
No,
appointed.
but they can be screened.
But you can definitely have criteria, especially, last time you guys put together explicit criteria, and so you can use that as a judgment factor. You can, have a little bit more wordage there to say that you have some discretion in the people you have as part of the focus group.
They would have no vote. They would help us be educated on our ideas.
They would have no vote, they would have influence, though,
Yes.
more influence than most.
Which is why it has to be open always.
Because others could show up and voice a disagreement, right? with a
Correct.
Focus group, yeah.
So I used when Christi and I were talking beforehand, I used the example of you getting particular town staff because you want to know particular things. to me, that's no different, right? You're just getting particular people that you believe have the information that you want, and you want to have a conversation with them. So I think you can screen, do anything. It's all a public process, right? So I don't think that there's any issue in that way, right? If you have 4 people who are renters apply and you feel you can only take 2 of them, then you just choose 2 on whatever criteria you want.
Thank you. Steve?
Well, first I want to know where Greg is. Second, what's the difference? Why are we screening people? You know, if 4 renters apply, why don't we let all of them participate? I don't want to be accused of handpicking a bunch of people that will be an echo chamber for the FinCom.
I want to get people who are actually paying enough attention over a period of time to provide us with informed feedback, which will not happen if it's whoever happens to show up. Or if it's whoever happens to show up and we get the same gadflies who show up to many of the public meetings.
They'll come anyway.
Yes, they will, but we can, by having a selection process, ensure some degree of diversity and ensure that the point of views that we want, or not point of views, the profiles we want to hear from voice. If there are other people who would like to speak also, they're entirely welcome to. These are open meetings. We can make sure to have public comment at the end of these specific agenda items if the chair would allow that, if that would simplify things.
Absolutely. I'm for all feedback we can get. That's the whole purpose of this, is as much feedback as possible.
Do you want to say that in the mic?
I give up.
I would love to discuss further with you offline what your concerns are and see if we can come up with a.
So the inflection point that we have to choose now is, do we want to do this under our authority, or do we want to go to the select board? So I'd like a quick around the table. Scott?
I think it should be, as you described, the focus group under the Finance Committee authority versus the Select Board. I think that gives us a better path.
Thank you. Gang?
I agree as well.
Okay, Allison?
I agree, as long as we can nail down what our limitations are, making sure that we're not getting into appointment and understanding.
Yeah, I definitely do not want to, accidentally trip over any, bylaws or town charter rules. I definitely do not want to run afoul of that. Steve?
No, I agree.
Roland?
Same.
I know how Christy feels. Corinne?
I agree.
Greg?
I agree. It should be a finance committee entity, and if we have to work within those constraints, so be it.
Dave?
Yeah, same. And, to a lesser extent, it's like the finance committee is appointed by the town moderator, so there's that independence, and, the finance committee doing this on its own is more of in the spirit of that.
Thank you. Well, that's unanimous. Christy, that's more work on you. Fair enough. Okay. Do you have anything else to say on this topic, or do you want to come back at the next meeting with next steps?
I'd like to come back at the next meeting. with
Very
next
good.
steps.
And at the next meeting, I would like to have a draft of what we want to put on the town website or put out through a municipal monthly or whatever, so that we can start the all call for what we're trying to do here, if that's not too much to ask from you at the next meeting. Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to try and share my content this time without dropping internet. I actually made sure to check this time that I was hardwired in. Just have to join the meeting again. And then we'll move into the point of view. Okay. Proposed final draft, take 2. First slide has not changed. Dave, I heard you loud and clear that you wanted precision in that first line. So I went with precision. And the line that we're going to use, the statement of fact that we're going to use is that 50.03% of the people who showed up to vote that day voted in favor of the override. I think it is then safe to say that that is as close to, as close a margin as could have been, is as close to comfortable as could possibly be considered comfortable, and even then it probably can't be considered comfortable. Dave, you had the hardest, you were the most vocal on this slide at our last meeting. Does this do what you wanted it to do?
I think it's great. It's very specific. It's very tightly worded, and probably most importantly, in my mind, it's very early in the presentation, and so I think this is very good in my view.
Slide 2, and it's the only thing that's in red. So definitely trying to catch people's eyes. Okay, nothing changed on the debt exclusion line, the reserve line, the unused tax levy line. And again, this 10-year inflation chart, you'll see in the appendix again, but this is something that I definitely want us to know and be able to speak to. Yes.
Would you object to making that 50.3% be in bold? It's a little hard to differentiate it because the text is brown. It will also make it stand out if someone is looking at a printout that is in black and white.
Does that work? Any other changes on this slide?
Sorry, I have a question about under unused tax levy, and you say it's the best kind of rainy day reserve.
Yes.
It's not really in reserves. It's like the ability to raise taxes without giving people a choice.
So which word would you
I don't
use
know.
instead of reserve?
I don't know if I said, taxpayers might not think it's the best kind.
Oh, it's the best kind because it sits in the taxpayer's pocket.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It's in your
okay,
pocket
okay.
for as long
Okay,
as
then-
possible.
Okay, so,
Best kind of rainy day source of revenue, source of,
then maybe just say that, like a dash, say like it's remains in the taxpayers' bank accounts until needed, or something like that. I didn't pick that up, but
I think I have it in the
nuance.
speaking notes, but
Okay.
I'm happy to be explicit about it. Stays in taxpayer pocket,
I thought you meant it was like best kind, and that we can rate it without
town meeting. No, you
asking anybody.
can't do anything with it until it's voted at town meeting.
Okay, thanks.
It does bring up a good point is you could get into a side discussion over what is an unused tax levy. I mean, to most audiences, it probably would involve a little bit of explaining. I'm happy to, move on, and I appreciate another revision of this. I'm just thinking that, to most folks, it may not be clear what unused tax levy is.
Does this satisfy your
Yeah, thanks.
comment?
I think you should capitalize. It's an edit, just a capitalized town meeting, I think.
Technically, no, because I'm not talking about the town meeting, I'm talking about some town meeting.
Okay.
So according to White, it should be
That's all right.
lowercase. Okay, any other comments on this? Yes, gang?
How about until levy, not until town meeting, because it's not clear what that means. And if people still feel uncomfortable, we can put rainy day reserve in quotation. Because until the explanation, I didn't know that was actually not a reserve. It is something that we have not levied yet.
Unused tax levy does not require anything at town meeting apart from people approving the budget that uses it.
It is an appropriation.
Okay. When you call it out like that, to me, it falls under the category of the various appropriations that require a specific vote at town meeting. It's not called out in the budget at town meeting. I mean, you have to be
It
paying a
is-
fair amount of attention. It's not part of the motion or in the warrant description.
It is part of the budget appropriation, so it needs an appropriation at a town, it needs some kind of appropriation at the town meeting.
But not, it
It's
all
not a
from
separate
the
item,
budget.
that's true, but I'm expecting people to have some concept of what tax levy capacity is, or we can speak to what it is.
Okay, I would take also rainy day out of reserve. It is simply a reserve. It's not, like, it will be used some next year. It's not because it's going to be a rainy day. It will most likely. ALG is currently, the current ALG model plans on using some of it.
Greg and Dave, I can't see your hands when I'm in presentation mode, so if you have something to say, just pipe in, okay? Okay,
Yeah, my apologies. I got banished to the back porch, so I've got the mute on so you don't hear the cars going by. But yes, you're fine.
okay. The main change on this slide is the last line. I was told to make it bold and short and to the point. I chose not to go with red because I was trying to save that for the 50.03. Made this as big as I could to make it fit in the slide and tried to cut out all the superfluous words I could. Does this capture the spirit of what we're trying to say to the appropriating entities?
Yes.
Any other changes to this slide?
Is that 3.6 million the number from the most recent? Thank you.
Yes, it is. Double checked it this afternoon. In the projected ALG shortfall in FY '28. Okay. I do not believe I made any changes to this slide. I should have put, oh, I did. I called it from the district to ABRSD. Again, I think that should be easy enough to explain to the citizens of this town. This slide put to bed. Okay. The bullet point on this slide that needed to be fully reworked is the last one. And again, I run the risk of trying to hold two thoughts in one line and use a brevity of words. But one of the things that I've heard constantly is we cannot live within Prop 2.5. That's just, it's something we can do short term, but over any 10-year period of time, it is highly unlikely to be able to live within Prop 2.5. And I kind of agree with that statement, that 2.5 is a little tight, especially over any decent historic period of time. What I do want to drive home is that we should at least be living within inflation. If we're not living within inflation, then we are saying the amount of money that we spend on this part of our cost of living is growing faster than is expected to be recouped through our salaries and our outside income. So it's possible I'm accused of trying to do two thoughts in one here in that top line, and I'm definitely trying to get your absolutely accurate opinion Christi, about making sure that the citizens' affordability has to be in play here, which is what I'm trying to accomplish in the brown-orange sub-bullet. But those are the only things that I changed on this slide. Does this make it clearer what we're trying to say, which is, yeah, we understand that on any one given year, we have a Prop 2.5 item that we have to stay within constraint of. But I would like us to realize that over a longer period of time, we really do need to stay within inflation, lest we start outstripping the citizens' ability to pay. Greg, I see your hand. I'll come to you in just a second. I'm looking at the table first to see if anyone at the table has any comments or changes that they wish to make on this slide.
I just have one suggestion. I'm wondering if you would consider taking the second set of bullets that starts with enhance and move that up above, because it's just broader. You know what I mean? Like,
I understand.
okay, thanks.
Anyone got any objection to that? Steve?
I'm not going to suggest any words, but as to your last point, well, it is possible to stay within 2.5% for long periods of time, because we did it from 2006 to 2024. However, we had some wind at our back. We had the reserves from the old Neswick project. We had other money coming in. And during most of that period of time, we totally neglected our buildings. We didn't build a new building during most of that period. So your overall concept is correct. If you're going to maintain your infrastructure, it's pretty difficult to stay within 2.5%.
That is exactly the argument I made at the school capital improvement project, and definitely beat that horse to death. But at the same time, I also feel that we need to stay below inflation, or at least within earshot of it, please.
But most of what we spend is compensation-based, and compensation-based is at least going to move.
Therein
with
lies
inflation.
therein lies the crux of the structural problem that we need the two entities to start addressing.
Like I said, I'm not going to argue with the wording, but when somebody says, well, we did, the answer is, yeah, but we neglected a lot.
I think that's absolutely an accurate statement. I completely agree with you. Mr. Jarbo, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, it's a wordsmithing thing that I'm not gonna worry about, but when you say faster than the citizenry's ability to afford it, in some cases, there are people who are paying taxes in Acton who aren't citizens, and it includes the business owners. So it's if you put taxpayers there, oh yeah, you just did it. Okay, then that's clear.
Yeah.
Do not believe I made any change to this slide.
Bless you.
Fourth bullet point be impact on the district instead of for the district.
We good on this one?
Is that a capital I on independently, or should we small? Oh, nope, okay, sorry.
Silence is golden.
I'm sorry, it's killing me. Either operating expenses or operations, but not operating.
Main thing I changed on this slide, if you'll notice, I pulled out the debt chart that was on slide 3 previously. Because we did hear back from the school that, and Steve, you were absolutely right, as of a refinancing in 2014, the last of the the senior high school debt will be paid off during this current fiscal year. So that does bring the outstanding excluded debts to just, and I say just in air quotes, the Boardwalk campus, the North Acton Fire Department, and the 8, 9, 13, 17 rounds of bonding that the Minuteman School has done. That said, I do not feel that we should be immediately having back-to-back overrides. And yes, I understand that a debt exclusion is a debt exclusion, but it's an override by any other name. It is raising of taxes over and above 2.5% plus new growth. So while I conveniently tried to use the debt fall off as a convenient excuse of why we should not even be entertaining it this year, even with that situation being delayed, with that situation being resolved, and we theoretically having more of a capacity for taxation for taking on new debt, I think it's, first of all, I think it's politically ill-advised. And secondly, I just think it's just unconscionable to have two overrides 1 year after the next. So I put this top bullet used to say postpone until, no debt exclusions until FY29. Now I'm being a little more open-ended about it, but I'm, let me be clear, I'm against the DPW because it's way too large. Independent of that statement, completely independent of that statement, I think it's politically ill-advised to do an override 2 years in a row. So this is why I changed this top bullet. Steve, you're the first to chime in.
Well, it's not a wash. The junior high, senior high debt is going to free up $1.4 million or something like that, but a $30 to $40 million DPW is going to add much more than that. So there is going to be an increase to the taxpayers. And it's, somebody pointed out earlier, it'll occur in a year when we're already showing a deficit on the ALG plan. So unfortunately, where we had a date in mind before, now all the dates are the same. Can't say 29 anymore.
And I did ask, and we're going to revisit this exact topic when we get to the ALG liaison. Let me be very clear about that. But when we vote when we vote to approve this point of view, I definitely would like to get a sense of the committee on if we are all in agreement that this is not the year to have yet another override in the form of a debt exclusion. Are you shaking your head that you don't agree, Scott? Or are you shaking your head that,
I'm agreeing with you.
so you're shaking your head that 2 overrides year after year is ill-advised?
I'm just looking forward to your
Yes.
motion, Mr. Chairman.
We'll get there. Greg has his hand up. Greg?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think you also made a point on an earlier slide about we'd like to see some 2 to 5 year plan as opposed to let's put together a 1 year plan. So I think we're still on solid ground, even if the one slide went away.
Thank you. The point of view conversation is easier than the very pointed question I'm going to ask during the ALG liaison. Okay. Any other comments on this slide? I'm kind of excited because there's only 11 slides, and this could mean that we're 90% of the way through it. Okay. Oh, I missed one. I must wait, no, I did. There was a line that I put in here earlier, and I want to make sure I find it. Yes. Okay. Near future. Okay, this is the other line. I knew it was in here somewhere. I just didn't call it out when we were there. I tried to highlight it, but I was in presentation mode. Under how much in debt exclusion, the second bullet point is a new bullet point. Refill of debt is not an automatic right. Just because some debt has rolled off of, has gone off the books, does not mean that the other entities have the ability right away to say, well, you were paying X in excluded debt last year. Should be no problem for you to pay X plus whatever, or even X minus whatever in the following year. The fixed term of the debt exclusion is the fixed term of the debt exclusion. It is not a right to refill the minute it gets done. So I missed that I changed that point earlier. Okay, holy cow. I did also have the one slide, which is the quote-unquote appendix. I didn't figure out how to do dots and dashes, as was asked of me, but I did figure out how to do squares and diamonds to make it clear of the two different things for when this gets printed in black and white. I believe this does meet the ADA requirements for graphs because it's got two separate visual cues for the graph. Yes, Greg?
If we approve this point of view.
We have a motion on the floor.
I was going to nitpick on this slide, though. I haven't nitpicked on any.
Okay, let's, I haven't heard a second yet, so let's go with some nitpicking. Steve?
Fair enough.
Your horizontal axis needs to have a bigger font, and your blue diamonds need to be as big as your red squares.
Second.
I disagree wholeheartedly for the sake of finishing this presentation.
Would you accept a statement that I will do my best to meet that requirement and would ask you to vote in approval of this statement on the faith that I will take another crack at it?
I have total trust in you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Can't figure it out, I can send me the chart, I'll do it.
We have, it's already been moved and seconded. Dave seconded it. I heard it over the wire.
I seconded the font change.
Oh, okay.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. So for the poor folks who have to take notes and create the meeting minutes on this, Greg moved and Roland seconded, approving this point of view with the stipulation that the chair will do his best to make this chart in the appendix even more readable. And with that, we will have to take a roll call vote. We're going to start on the phone. Dave?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Gang?
Aye.
Allison,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Roland,
Aye.
Christi,
Aye.
Corinne.
Aye.
Sorry, gang and Corinne, and I had you vote, even though it doesn't matter. I apologize, so we'll try not to do that next time. And I, of course, vote aye, having written a significant portion of this. Okay, congratulations, we have our point of view. I will note that it is the first meeting in September. I'm pretty happy with that. I believe this is the earliest we've ever had it done, which gives us plenty of time for outreach to the PTSOs, Council on Aging, any cultural organizations in town for our newer members. We proactively go out and ask to be invited, which I realize is an oxymoron, but we ask to be invited to these various groups. Some choose to invite us, some choose to ignore us, as is their right. If we are invited, we ask for 2 volunteers. We don't want to send any one lone member of Finance Committee out on their own, lest they get eaten alive or lest they say something that cannot be verified as the rest of the committee. So we like to have 2 people go to each of these meetings. There will be if we are invited to a place, you'll get an email right away saying, hey, look at your calendar and come prepared at the next meeting to say if you can volunteer to present the point of view or not. This is obviously completely optional, but if every PTSO and every organization in town takes us up on it, we're gonna need some volunteer hours. Last year, because we didn't get our point of view done until 4 weeks before town meeting, sad to say, we did not present it once, except to the select board. Scott and I will be presenting to the select board, and Christi and I will be presenting to the school committee, since you are the liaison to the school committee. The great news is at least one member of the school committee has already seen it and has heard our very, very fine attention to of versus for and other items within the point of view. Excellent. I will change this to final, save it, and post it. Once I correct the chart, make it pop. Excellent. Okay. ALG review is the next item on our agenda. Let me call up my notes, and I will also ask Scott if he has anything to, well, first I will ask him to correct me if I say something inaccurate, and then I will let him weigh in on his comments as well. Come on. I guess I should start by saying who the new members are, since this was the first meeting of the new year. On the school side, it's still Peter Light and Sherry Matthews from the administration perspective. From the school committee members, Tori is coming back for a repeat performance, and Yang Chin, or Lucian, is the other member of the school committee. On the town side, it's town manager and Marianne, who we are all getting to know very well, coming to our meetings. Thank you very much for being our liaison. From the select board side, it's Dean Charter and Fran Arsenault. And that's everybody. And Bart is back for his 38th year as our moderator, even though he moved out of town in the last millennium. So, our thanks to Bart. Let's see. The school side preliminary closeout for FY24 was $468,000 to the good on revenue. It was primarily investment driven. E&D is at 2.1 million at the start of the year, which is 1.8% of the total budget, which is below our recommended target of 3 and safely below the state mandatory ceiling of 5. It is important to note that this 2.1 million is after a June adjustment that required another $400,000 to deal with extraordinary health insurance trust run-out payments that was voted on as a late in the season adjustment, but this 2.1 million or 1.8% of total budget is the real starting number. It's where things kick off. On the town side, the FY24 closeout, again, was hit heavily by health insurance trust. There were hiring and spending freezes, but they covered the whole of the hit, no pun intended, and that left with merely $70,000 unspent on the expenses side, and they're very happy that it was still a positive number. Or since it can't be a red number, they're actually quite happy that it's a positive number, that's not zero. On the revenue side, motor excise tax was to the good, as was investment. And that was to the good, to the tune of 1.7 million. They also went back and did a scrub of the most recent year's warrant articles, and they found $250,000. They were able to recoup $250,000 from that. The overall turnback is just about $2 million, with the caveat that it hasn't gone through state certification, et cetera. We should have it back in October. I believe that was the number that was reiterated at last night's select board meeting. So about $2 million turnback total, which is very good, considering the surprise that we had last year. Neither entity wanted to make any comment about fiscal year 25, being that it's merely September. It was merely, September 2nd? And I don't even think school had started, or school hadn't, that was like day 2 of school, day 3 of school. So nobody wanted to say anything about fiscal year 25 at this time. I will say that with regard to recouping previous year's warrant articles, the town manager does not expect to see any more, anything else to be recouped. Of course, I'm all for double checking. The longest part of the conversation during the entire meeting was around the, what's the word I'm looking for? The norm, the common way of doing things, the precedent, the 30-plus year precedent on ALG, which is that if you're going to ask for any kind of override at all, you're supposed to have done it at the previous year's town meeting, and you absolutely should declare it by the end of October in ALG. And this brings us to what I suspect will be a sticking point, what will be our first serious challenge of the new year. This is at least the third meeting that Finance Committee has had since the start of the year. We start our year as soon as town meeting is over, where we have said we are not interested in having a debt exclusion for the DPW. Being that ALG has to be a consensus-driven organization, it's possible for Scott and myself to say no, and then we will not get to consensus if the select board chooses to continue to demand it. So while it's easy to say in the point of view, we do not want to have a debt override, a debt exclusion. The much more pressing conversation, and one that I need to have with all the other members of ALG as soon as I possibly can, but with no more than 2 of them in between any one ALG meeting, lest I run afoul of open meeting laws, is, are we going to hold the line on this and potentially have the first ever ALG not getting to consensus on arguably not the most important thing. The most important thing, of course, is the budget, but arguably the second most important topic that can come up at ALG. So we just had, during the point of view, we just had a conversation where everyone said, yeah, no, we're good. We don't want to have debt override. Are we willing to hold the line, potentially just the two of us, if we can get no other subscribers? Looking at you, Mary Ann, maybe you want to join in and help break the deadlock on that one. You do not have to reply right now. Do we care strongly enough about this? I personally do. There's also the very real possibility that if we hold the line and take it to town meeting, remember, a debt exclusion is a 2/3 vote, which is a pretty high bar to clear, especially the year after a operating override that passed by, again, in red, 50.03%. Christi, you had your hand raised. You're the first one I saw.
I've been around this block twice in going into debt exclusion. I have always known long before this point how much money is being asked for. I have not heard any of those details. So from my perspective, this feels really rushed, unless I've somehow missed a whole bunch of stuff over the summer when I was sick. So yes, I'm very comfortable personally. I don't have the information to give any sort of agreement to it, in addition to not thinking this is the right timing.
If you're given a ballpark number on September 26th, which is the night that they're presenting, which is the night the DPW working group or building committee presents their first public declaration of what they wish to do, is that still a little tight for you, or is that something that you'd be comfortable with reconciling between now and the first Monday of May?
I remember the spring before the fall town meeting to vote for the fire station debt, having had multiple discussions about what the fire station was going to contain and what it was going to cost. Haven't had anywhere near that, and I'm not willing to give a hand-wavy number with so little information to agree with.
I would also remind people who may not have been through that, the number for the North Acton Fire Station changed at the absolute last minute, much to my continued disapproval. And if a similar change occurred on this DPW building, it would be in the $65 to $70 million range. Steve.
Well, in the long history of ALG, I can only speak for about 25 years of the 37.
You get props for that, sir. You get props for that.
This is certainly not, I think this is the earliest you're asking that question, because usually these disputes come up much later in the process. In the past, as far as FinCom is concerned, we've always held our initial position until somebody shows us a reason to come off of it. Right now, I haven't seen anything that would make me want to support the DPW building at this stage. I didn't like the last version of it. I didn't like the version before that. At this point, my advice to you, to Scott, and to the whole committee is we hold our position until somebody convinces us otherwise. As far as taking ALG to the limit, I've seen it go to 6:59 on the first night of town meeting before we reach consensus. So I'm not in a rush.
Okay, my understanding is that the October unspoken sort of agreement was just for the specific purpose of making sure that if we're going to get to an override, we all need to be rowing in the same direction. And coming to us in February, say they come to us, first week of March with an absolutely perfect plan that we can't possibly have a problem with, that gives us zero time to socialize it with the public. So that's why my understanding is that we had set this October deadline, saying if you don't have your ducks in a row by the end of October, we don't believe you're going to be able to cross the finish line. So we're not interested in playing.
Yeah,
Is that accurate?
It was October based on an April town meeting. It could probably go a little later at this point, but last year's
We let go to Thanksgiving.
override, we went too late, and I had people calling me the night before the election who used to be on this committee, who used to be teachers in, Acton, and they still didn't think they knew enough about what was going on. So the educational process was, I guess, barely enough to get it passed, but it wasn't nearly good enough, in my opinion. So I think the later we go with these details, the harder it gets to make the point that you need to do it. Nobody's going to dispute the fact that the current DPW building is a hall. The question is, what do we need? And have we taken a good look at possible other ways to approach the services? Part of what we're talking about, cost cutting. Do we have to build something? What are we talking, 48,000 square feet? At whatever it is, $600 a square foot or something, So, no, I think as far as my advice to the committee is we hold our position until somebody shows us some facts that we can support.
Do we use Thanksgiving as a tripwire? If they don't have it done, if they don't have our buy-in by Thanksgiving, they're not going to have our buy-in this year? Because if we leave the door open, there's going to be we'll get you that information in a month. We'll get you that information at the next meeting. And then we find ourselves right up against town meeting and, well, it's too late to change your mind now, right? We've all heard that before too.
Well, like I said, there was the time we went right up to, they were waiting for us to come to the stage before we made consensus. Two problems with setting a hard date. We haven't seen any budgets for the year. I mean, we don't know if we're currently showing about a $1.7 million deficit before. Now, this wouldn't affect the deficit, but it would affect taxes.
Yes, it would.
So if you got the regular 2.5, you had another 1.7 million and another 2 million of debt service onto that. Now we're talking a 5 or 6% tax hike.
Not yet.
And I don't think, then that, in my mind, puts everything at town meeting in question.
Good point.
Not just this, this one item. I'm getting on a soapbox, but I look at the closeness of the last override vote as our taxes are too high vote, not anything specific about any particular part of the town, but simply that people think their taxes are too high. And so I'm loath to try and up their taxes again in the next year.
Greg, I believe you're next.
Yeah, I agree with Steve. And in terms of the ALG, I was there when we created it. I was on the Board of Selectmen at that time. And part of the reason we created it was because Prop 2 really no provision for how we should go about implementing it within towns, because we were doing away with an old concept called fiscal autonomy, and now we were working within a new concept called Prop 2.5. And so not every community has an ALG. We do. It's certainly worked well over the years, but there is nothing in law. There may be lots of interesting precedents by now, but it's a political entity. And so to the extent that you can hold your ground and make your case, make it, because I agree. I think we are on solid ground. And Steve's right. This is not the time to go back to say, we had a 45 vote margin last time. Let's see if we can get something passed again. No, this is not that time. So I think if we hold firm, the other side, I think, will see the wisdom of our point of view.
I am buoyed and bolstered by these comments. Scott, is there anything that I missed, or is there anything that you heard at ALG that I have not relayed to our committee?
I don't think so, honestly. I did take some notes in my haste to make it to the meeting and get home. I brought my fantasy football notebook. So if you want to know the preferred draft order, if you're drafting a team post-start of the season, I have plenty of information.
I think I heard you say you're taking the over-under on what a debt exclusion with a 2/3 vote at town meeting on first week, Monday in May would be.
So I'm disappointed I grabbed the wrong notebook, but I had some notes in my other one.
Christi?
I've been very dismayed in the past to hear the town manager especially, but also the select board a few times say that we've had multiple years or a long time period over which to express an opinion, especially an opinion on something that they would like us to support that we do not, which we have chosen to not give an opinion on until all of the details were there. I am very concerned that this DPW is going to be another, well, we've been working on it for years and they haven't said no, so, it's too late for them to come back and say no now. That I would love it if you all at ALG would nip that in the bud, because I will not accept that. And for me, it's a hard no. They need to now prove to me otherwise. There is no benefit of the doubt left.
Is it accurate for me to say that this is our third meeting in a row where we have unanimously said we are not interested in voting for the DPW? Would anyone disagree with that statement? Marianne, as our representative to the town, is that clear? That we have zero interest in supporting a debt exclusion for the DPW this year?
You are making that clear.
And Mr. Martin, Selectman Martin, I'm going to have to ask you the exact same question. Are we crystal clear on our position at this time?
No, I heard what you said. Yeah, just to be clear that if we voted for a DPW building at town meeting, it wouldn't hit people's taxes probably till FY28. So just
Depends on when you take out the first bond.
understood. Could be FY27, that would probably be the earliest.
It could be FY26, because if you
It
take the
wouldn't be
bond out,
FY26.
you have a 6-month grace period from when you float it. So if you take it out before the end of January, it will hit in FY26. So it could hit in FY26. That's why it matters.
I don't think I don't think that's likely, and it's likely, I think, to go the other way.
Well, the projected deficit in '27 is even worse. It would
Indeed.
at least give you a year between.
The more years, the better. Allison?
I would just say that I'm open to hearing more information. I'm open to being convinced. I'm not convinced with the information I have right now. So I agree with you, but I would listen to more information, yeah.
I find myself in the weird position of knowing that we have to do something with the DPW building, but I'm not on board with a $40 million building. I am not on board with the size and scale that was last discussed. I've also not seen, other than $1 million spent in feasibility, I've not seen the analysis that says why anything other than what they proposed last time is what they're going to continue to push forward with this time. I'm open to being surprised on September 26th when I hear the latest and greatest. I will also be very saddened if it is the same presentation as last time, adjusted for escalation.
Well, I would, yes. I mean, we did authorize $1 million. At the moment, I'm still looking at stuff that's 3 years old, trying to figure out where this thing is. I've seen nothing of the $1 million. Heard nothing. Heard round numbers that I've heard for 3 or 4 years.
So the town manager has announced that September 26th is a large and important meeting on this DPW topic. I unfortunately will not be able to attend it because I'll be coming back from out of town, but I would strongly encourage as many finance committee members as possible to please attend. It is also my plan to call the town manager or whomever he may decide to send in his stead to give us as detailed a presentation as possible with regard to the DPW and to hear not only our initial concerns, but to be the point person for questions that we generate shortly after that meeting. And that will be in one of our October meetings.
September 20th? That doesn't make sense.
That's Thursday.
I believe that's the day that they said.
Is there a special meeting for it, or is it?
I'll look it up, but I believe it's a public forum on, it's the DPW Building Committee's first major meeting. I've got the right date?
I thought you were saying it was going to be at a select board
I
meeting.
believe you're right, September 26th.
It's the DPW Building Committee's kickoff big meeting. I believe it's the September 26th. I'll double check.
Well, can we get a preview on the 24th?
I can certainly make that request.
I doubt that they're going to know a lot more on the 26th than they would know on the 24th, but I won't be here on the 26th anyway.
I'll be remote, so somebody else is going to have to run that meeting. Okay, let me see if let me just take a real quick look. It's not on the calendar yet, but I could have sworn that was the date that they declared. We will, I will double check it. Okay. That is the end of the ALG review. Unfortunately, due to vacations and the craziness that is back to school, I do not have meetings to share at this time. I apologize to the committee that we do not have the minutes to review at this time. Liaison reports. I just did ALG. Christi, do you have a school committee to report out?
The school committee has been considering leasing land to TowerCo. They're one of the biggest providers of cell towers. They want to put one behind the the administration building because there is almost no cell coverage over there. This was a big issue during the microburst because the emergency lines went down, the hard lines to the schools. And because there's a lack of cell coverage, it was very hard for the administration to get information out to parents. If you had a kid, they kept everyone late for it. And it was pretty late getting the messages out about that. So they would like to improve that. There's been some public concern about adverse health risks from having towers so close to buildings with children in them and other adults, et cetera. So they are going to look into that further, hoping to take a vote at the next school committee meeting. Nothing else, I think, of financial interest going on there.
Any other liaison reports? I did not get to the select board meeting last night.
The water district meeting.
Go ahead.
So I think the only thing that's really relevant is they did discuss the MWRA, which is I don't remember, you know what it is. It's the resource, that's what the R stands for. So I think that they are going to be drafting an intra-municipal agreement, regarding a study to look into, I think with 5 or 6 other towns, the cost of, I guess, joining the MWRA is essentially what the study would look at. So it's something that Maynard is motivated to do. And so I think that there were, between us and Maynard, 4 other towns, 6 total, that we're looking at engaging Stantec, I think is the name of the company, to, and then share the cost of having that report generated. So I think that $75,000 may have been allocated to studying the feasibility of joining, and so obviously the cost would be much lower if we did it with Maynard and other towns, so.
But still significant. I believe when they brought this to us 15 years ago, it was a tens of millions of dollars approach. Go ahead.
Yeah, it means basically a water line, probably up the median of 495 from Weston or someplace like that.
Allison, did they discuss costs around that? Because I attended a meeting last year in which they did some of this.
So the MWRA had estimated $1.1 billion, the total cost of the project, but they believe that there was some mention of either federal or state funding that would go
Well,
towards.
Was that inclusive of the pay-in we have to do? Like, that you kind of have to ante into the system? Last time they were talking about that being waived.
They didn't discuss
Effectively,
that
I
in
think
detail.
we're-
At this point, they were really just focusing on, whether they wanted to move forward with working with Maynard to actually get the feasibility or the study done. Yeah.
And last time I heard them talk about it, it wasn't an all or nothing regarding our water supply, that there would be the option of keeping our pumps also online.
They didn't discuss that. I mean, earlier in the meeting, they did talk about the work that's being done on the PFAS facility that's being built at each of the different locations, and that's still moving forward. And I assume that we would still be able to treat the water that comes in if MWRA isn't treating it.
Yeah, right now MWRA does not have PFAS.
Right, and I reviewed that as well, because they do a lot of other treatments and testing, but that's conspicuously absent from the list. So I assume that the water we would still treat it ourselves, and why wouldn't we use our own sources if it's also going into the treatment system? But I'm not knowledgeable about the topic myself. But that seemed to be the only thing relevant to finance-related matters, that they're going to move forward with studying that possibility.
Any other liaison reports? Okay, we need to have a quick conversation. So the next meeting is in 2 weeks. So that's the 24th. But we need to have a conversation about the 2 meetings in November.
October.
I thought you wanted to do the November ones. You were going to do the October, we're going to do the October ones a little late, but we're going to need to
That's
move.
what I figured we need to talk
Okay.
about that too.
So for October, we're going to start late. Our 2 meetings, we're going to start at 8 o'clock instead of 7:30.
Yes.
So, so we're meeting on the 24th, normal time. Then the 8th, and the 22nd of October, we're going to start at 8 o'clock rather than 7:30 to allow Christi to attend the school committee's, what are they calling it? Not a task force, budget?
Yes.
Budget task force? Their version of the cost-cutting committee. Then for the 2 meetings in November, those also coincide with meetings of the school cost-saving measures. So I would like to get everyone's take on moving the Tuesday, the 12th, up a little bit to Tuesday, the 5th, sort of swapping those 2 weeks to free Christi up to be able to go to both of the meetings without having to race across town to get to them.
Just
Yes.
a quick FYI only, that is Election Day, so it's just an FYI, Tuesday, November 5th.
Okay. This room's not in use during that, as a part of election activities, correct?
It's usually not.
Very good. If this room is already booked, I will find another room for us to meet at. Last resort, of course, always being ActonTV, because they seem to be very accommodating and very willing to help us if we happen to be in trouble on rooms. Would people rather move the 1st or the 2nd of the meetings in November? My take is to move the 1st, go from the 12th to the 5th. Does anyone have any strenuous objection to it? And then the second meeting, the meeting on the 26th. So is Thanksgiving the 28th?
Yes.
Okay. So how about we move the Tuesday, the 22nd to Tuesday, the 19th? Just sort of shift the 2 meetings in November up a week to stay away from Thanksgiving and to allow for maximum meeting coverage. I'm not seeing anyone who's super unhappy about it. I will make the room reservation request tomorrow. I believe that covers all of the agenda items, unless there's something that somebody else would like to bring up. Okay, with nothing else to be brought up, our lonely eyes turn to Gang and ask him for his end-of-day responsibilities.
Thank you for the honor. Motion to adjourn.
That was Gang saying yes and Roland saying second. Greg?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Gang?
Aye.
Allison?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Roland? Aye. Christi?
Aye.
Corinne?
Aye.
And I say aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all.